The DUI investigator says, do I think you're too hammered to drive home? Yeah, I'm not going to let you drive home. Do I think you're too impaired to throw in jail that I have probable cause for? No. This story is one of those stories that'll knock your socks off.
Welcome back to Internal Feray Police Podcast. Today's guest, another heavy hitter, Andrew Baxter, known as the way I like to call him, Easy Breezy. He's the host of the Comm Center. We're going to talk about his podcast. We're going to get into a story related to alcohol. He did experience something in his 28-year career, and you know what? It's there's a lot of lessons to be learned, a lot of takeaways. And just get ready for a really good conversation. And on that note, we'll see you soon. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Code 6 with Andrew Baxter. Drew. Easy Breezy. Comm Center with Drew Breezy. Host of the Comm Center. Hey, brother. Thank you so much for showing up, man. You and I been chatting. We got to meet not too long ago, and I appreciate your you coming on, bro.
I appreciate you having me, Marlon. Like, it's kind of, it seems like we had parallel careers. Like I did nearly 28 years here in Florida. And it seems like, you know, it was kismet at the end that we met up because we both kind of separated around the same time or retired around the same time rather. And then we're both kind of doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Just trying to. So you're like the guy I made it through the academy with that I never met. You know what I mean?
Right. No, partners for life. I will say, like I always do, that there will never be enough platforms for us to get our message out, to have that voice. I was told by a guest, you know what, Marlon, internal affairs, as we're going to get into a little IA story of yours, it's a topic that's not discussed a lot, and you and I can relate. I mean, you're over there in the wonderful state of Florida, and it's a bit taboo. However, some of your guests, right, get to come in and really have to tell their own story the way they want to. No media, no journalists to edit anything. And now that you're separated from the department, I can pretty much tell my story because maybe the way the investigation went down wasn't the way it actually happened. Or if I get an active police officer, which is fine. Hey, tell me about something that happened, I don't know, 5 years ago. And if it's adjudicated, just come tell the story before we can learn and we can get some takeaways from it. That's great because the audience is, as well as you know, is a lot of police officers, a lot of dispatchers, you know, a lot of civilians that are, you know, very pro-police for the most part, that can learn from it. So I thank you, man. Thanks for showing up. With that being said, hey, man, let me ask you this, since we are talking about IA. If you were in a room full of sergeants and they were just beginning their assignment in internal affairs, what's the one thing you would want them to know about that job?
Internal affairs is not the enemy. Internal affairs actually is probably going to be the relief to a lot of your problems that you'll never see. And if you aspire to be in upper level management, if you aspire to be an administrator in that agency, there is an argument that could be made that you should make a pathway through internal affairs because you get a certain look behind the curtains. There's what the public sees of the administration of a law enforcement agency, and then there's what the officers see in the administration of a law enforcement agency, and then there's what the administration sees, because they're trying to make everybody happy, to include the top cop, whoever it is, the chief, the sheriff, and they're busy just weighing everything all of the time, making tough decisions. Yeah. And they're people too, in my opinion. And I kind of, you know, I've been through some IA stuff in my career one time, by the way. Knock on wood, they can't come back for me.
No.
I don't think anyway. But
well, it's at a statute, bro. So don't worry about it. I'll argue that for you.
I've been through some things, but I've also seen the other side of it, and I've also been that administrator that had to make that decision. Yeah. What's the best for the agency? What's going to send the message to the rest for morale purposes, and what's going to send the message the best? And by the way, believe it or not, especially as you'll see in my case, what's the best for the employee? Yeah. And I think that. For a room full of sergeants to have to understand, you're going to have cases out on the street or cases as a detective sergeant that you'll lose sleep over. I promise you, if you're an administrator in that agency, or if you're in internal affairs in that agency, you're going to get half as much sleep, because there are some very weighty decisions that you have to make.
No, totally. Very well said. Let me ask you this. You think that doing an assignment in internal affairs is to protect cops? What's your thought on that?
I think there's more protection of cops than cops give it credit for. Look, the public will tell you, or just the sentiment of the public, like, every family member you have, Marlon, I don't know if this is the way it is at your Thanksgiving meal, but every family member you have loves you and adores you, and it loves, the fact that you're a police officer and would support you to the hilt until they got pulled over. And then all of a sudden you're the worst piece of shit on the planet because all cops are dirty. Yes. And that's, and when you're the cop's cop, isn't that the exact same thing? Yes. So, it's the chill that I'm sure that you experienced when you walked into the room and people change the conversation and people talk differently. And for God's sakes, you're just a dude like them. I mean, yeah, you're working on a different, off a different mindset, but the protection of the system, the integrity of the system, yeah. That's one thing, but also the sheer amount of calls that are just like eliminated at the IA level that never make it back to the employee or never make it back to the employee's supervisor is probably astronomical and way understated. Maybe that should be the lead for all of the IA people to explain.
Yeah, no, look, just make sure that when you're doing this assignment, no stone goes unturned. Don't have any expectations. Just because someone is making complaints and alleging all this kind of wrongdoing doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be sustained and it actually happened. I get your point. I think where we go wrong, and I think that's so controversial, is when you start doing internal stuff. So interesting you say that we're not the enemy. Very well said, because the follow-up question to that is, when you came on the job, and look at you, man, you got a little time on me, man. 1992 is when you started your career in law enforcement, but you were in the academy in 1994. I got to ask you, I know 1992 you began a career in dispatching. I know that's very passionate, and something that you keep striving to let the public know. But even as a dispatcher, let me ask you this. What did they tell you about IA back then? What was your impression, or what did someone say? Like, are these people evil, or what's going on?
It's if you're a civilian and you have a cop car behind you, right? It doesn't matter if you're doing right or you're doing wrong. You're going to get the feeling in the pit of your stomach. And that's, listen, I grew up in a military background. I was in the Air Force for 6 years. Okay. I always strove for perfection. So I didn't want to just be like a trainer of something. I wanted to be in the standardization and evaluation section. And I achieved that. And I kind of just due to that exposure, I understood what it was like to set the standard and make sure that the standard is maintained. Yeah. Therefore, I never really had the major creeps by internal affairs that I think that everybody is told. But it's not. It just really isn't like you think. So, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, I was probably told the standard stuff like, ooh, be careful what you say around them, or, they're out to make a case on you, or come on, man. Just do simple math. Like, there's only 365 days in a year. And at our agency at the time, there's probably 2,500 people. And wow. If they were out to get people, I don't think they would have a whole lot of time on their hands.
Yeah, exactly. Do simple, basic math. I just always wonder, you know what? I mean, I came out in 1998, and I could have sworn my training officer said, these people are evil. or there's just this negative, stigma attached to internal affairs. So, which is probably one of several reasons why I decided to do this, right? I mean, I worked internal affairs, but.
Well, dig this, Marlon. The era I'm in, right after I started in the communication center was a little bit just after Rodney King. So this is something LA centric that trickled its way all the way over to Florida. So I can only imagine how internal affairs was looked at after that. I can only imagine how the city put the pressure on the agency to put the pressure on the detectives within internal affairs. Like I'll bet you it was landmark. I bet you it just shaped the way things, because if I'm feeling the heat as a dispatcher all the way in Florida, I'm pretty sure that, they were going to make some extreme examples out of people. And, then maybe the casualty of that war that took place, but whatever happened.
Yeah, no, totally, man. Well, hey, I appreciate that, man. Look, let's take a trip down memory lane, why don't we? Academy in 1992 as a dispatcher, I just mentioned that. In 1994, for whatever reason, you said, you know what, let's do it, man. I want to break leather and strap up and be a cop. And then let's see, you made corporal, which is to us, it's like a field training officer. In 2016, hiccup. We re-promoted.
No, 2006.
That was 2006. Hiccup. We re-promoted in 2012. You made sergeant in 2006. Congratulations on that promotion. And wait, hold on a second. Congratulations again. You're promoted in 2019.
Yeah.
And then you said goodbye in 2021. And wow, that's 20. That's about 29 years, right? 29 years. If you were to take
28 years and 11 months, Marlon.
There you go.
If you want to be exact.
And a wake up. Don't forget that. And a wake up.
I couldn't, which should tell you something. I couldn't just make it a tidy 30 years. And I honestly didn't feel like waiting around for exactly 29 years either. It was time to go.
Yeah. You know what? Go ahead.
And it's, I don't regret it.
Me and you both here in LAPD, there's this culture that I've been told for 15, almost, I want to say probably even 20 years where, hey, there's this drop program, deferred retirement opportunity program where you can lock in your pension. You have to be 50 years old with 25 years of service, and you can lock in your pension then and just do an extra 5 years. On the average, you walk away with $500,000 in the bank. But you know what? It's not for everybody. I quit at 24 and said, you know what? When you know it's time to go, it's time to go. That's just the way I see it. You feel it, and look at us now, man.
The drop is free. The drop, we have the same program here, or similar program anyway, but the drop it's free money essentially, because you're making 2 paychecks.
Yeah.
And your pension is frozen. They're just putting that in an escrow, and boom, they hand you a big check when you leave.
Yeah.
To me, the money wasn't worth it. My happiness was what was worth it. So I mean, I made it a year and a half or 2, like close to 2 years, I guess, in deferred retirement. I think I left just under 6 figures, which means I left quite a bit of money on the table.
Yeah.
But it was that part isn't free. It's easy money. I was in an easy position. I was a lieutenant running a day shift. I had these good, laugh a minute sergeants that, and corporals that I worked with. I had a great supervisory crew. I had a kick-ass day shift crew for day shifters. You know what I mean? Like, cause they're different creatures than night people and night shift people. And look, it was automatic. All I had to do was just not hit snooze that extra time and just get there on time with my uniform on and run a roll call, and the rest kind of ran itself. It was the administrative. It was the rest of the stuff that got to me. It was the look. Getting back to the room full of sergeants, I'm going to tell you all, fight to the death for your people. Yes. If they're right, fight to the death, and if they're wrong, you're going to have to figure out a way to explain to them that they're wrong and how you're going to help them guide through it. I just got tired of fighting to the death for people that were right, and like. They know, the people that were fighting me knew they were right. Yeah. But they're too afraid themselves. It just got old. And I'm like, yeah, I can go do this on my own.
Nice. Speaking of sergeant, let me ask you this. What was your favorite function of being a sergeant? What did you like?
I worked, I was promoted into a street crimes unit, which was, it was street crimes is just basically not, it's a patrol function, but it's not responding to calls. So you're looking at daily briefs to figure out where the crime trends are and, that kind of thing. Doing traffic stops, making cases, following the intelligence-led policing model. We just kind of focused on the prolific offenders and stuff like that. There was an undercover element to it.
Nice.
And it was a blast. It was young, moldable, next level above FTO type deputy sheriffs that were about to be detectives or about to be corporals that I could teach them to do the right thing. And I could teach them also, like, look, there's some old salt trick to this. Like, we could definitely get this done, all ethically and legally. But
nice.
I had a blast doing that. And every single one of the people that were on that squad, with the exception of two, are all supervisors in the agency where I left.
Nice.
I mean, that's testament to them. They were good people and they were sharp to begin with. But I had a blast doing that. Then I was given the opportunity, while I was the sergeant of street crimes, to go run this place. There was a big shakeup in our special investigations division, which is the undercover division. It has narcotics, gun squad, all these other vice. I was given the opportunity to run this squad of, it was called the Special Operations Section, SOS. Selective Operations, Special Operations. It just depended on who was saying the title, to be honest.
Got it.
And what we did was it was like a catch-all for the undercovers. So if it wasn't specifically long-term drug investigations or street-level drugs or guns, or we did it. So it was human trafficking before human trafficking was cool. It was prescription fraud. It was vice crimes. It was the gang unit, which we have a very different kind of gang problem than California does. So I had a blast in that unit also, because that was a bunch of guys that wanted to learn too, and we were kind of like the Bad News Bears. But the whole reason there was a shakeup in that division was because there was an officer-involved shooting involving SWAT on a search warrant that was served out of that division for like a misdemeanor amount of marijuana or something, and they ended up shooting and killing a young guy in his bedroom. He popped out of bed, and they shot and killed him. So then they start digging into the search warrant. They start digging into the operations plans. They start digging into the investigations. They just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and realize it's time to make a change here. Like, this was not a knee jerk. This was we better save ourselves.
We shit the bed.
So I had the distinction of getting over there, and within the first week or so, being the first to serve a search warrant with SWAT. And you talk about, I think everybody around us was nervous. I think everybody around us was scared to death. And I was not. I was just like, no, this is just like every other search warrant. We had a bad search warrant one time in X amount of years.
Right.
Now we're getting ready to go into another one, and we're going to take it very seriously, and we're going to take it with the same diligence, and we're capable, and we're competent, and these are great detectives, and we're going to handle it. And it went off without a hitch. I mean, so that was probably my landmark case as a sergeant.
Oh, nice. Let me ask you this. Corporal, that's an FTO, right? Is that a field training officer position?
It's not. Corporal is a first line supervisor for us. So you're actually a full on supervisor as a corporal.
All right.
Field training officer is just an extra designation for a deputy sheriff.
Got it. Now, as a first line supervisor, can you share with us like a troubled employee that you had to supervise? What was that like? Because I know you had one.
It's funny you say that. There was a detective that came into my unit. I was a corporal over some detectives, some property crimes detectives, probably one of the best assignments I've ever had. In the elevator pitch for this unit is when I got here, we were in the highest crime area of Hillsborough County. And now that I'm leaving here as a sergeant, we're in the lowest crime area of Hillsborough County.
Oh, nice.
And it's because of what those detectives did. So we had a detective who was rehomed from Internal Affairs.
Okay.
And he was in our area, but he was kind of a loner, and he kind of wanted to do his own thing. He wasn't a good listener. He was more of a just like leave me alone kind of guy.
Okay.
And everybody just assumed he knew what he was doing, and he put on a good show, and man, he was sharply dressed. To me, he was a nice guy. Everybody, he was kind of standoffish to everybody else or whatever.
Okay.
Well, I'm going through the reports one day, and I see like this very easy case. We ended up having to remediate him.
Okay.
And so we put him with a field training detective to kind of like, hey, hold his hand and let's get him the proper training he deserves.
Right.
To make him successful. And I'm going through one of these cases, and I'm like, this is a slam dunk. Why didn't we arrest this guy? Can we just at least go out there and interview it? That way we can close it out, but we probably won't get an arrest out of it.
Right.
And the field training detective agreed, the sergeant agreed, and the detective, when confronted with it, said, yeah, I never went out there. I just wrote that in there that I went out there. I was like, wait, so you lied? You lied in that report? And he's like, well, when you put it that way. So I said, okay, well, how many reports are there that you just see? He didn't know what he was doing, and this was the whole point. And we knew he didn't know what he was doing. We were trying to get him through it, but he was just kind of like, he was definitely keeping up on his supplements. It's just that what he was writing was not necessarily anything he did. And nobody went to jail over it. And that was what threw up the red flag, actually, is that he didn't take action that he could have taken. So
yes,
sure enough, full on internal affairs investigation went through all of his cases, and he was allowed to resign. He was actually allowed to move. Excuse me. He was actually allowed to move to our detention area because he started out as a detention deputy.
You guys are super nice.
Yeah, we definitely.
If you look, the way I see it, and by the way, I had similar and same circumstances. I had a case that ended up at a border rights facing termination. If you want to soften the blow, you can call it inaccurate. He wrote inaccurate information on the supplemental report.
This was intentionally inaccurate. And the thing, Marlon, is, and I'll relate it back to the room full of sergeants.
Yeah.
My experience through an IA investigation, a very intense IA investigation, God gave me the gift of being able to guide this guy through it.
Yes,
totally. And that's a good I was more than happy to share the wisdom that I gained in my own investigation. Yeah. And I know for a fact it helped. I know for a fact that the following 2 or 3 years after that, I got Christmas cards from the guy.
Right.
And I started the investigation. So, I mean, like, look, you don't have to be a dick to everybody.
No, of course not.
And this guy is at the lowest of his low. And sometimes you don't realize how low you can be until you've been that low. So I just kind of guided that guy through the way I would have loved to have been handled, but I wasn't.
Exactly. Look, when you know that you are being punished for something that you did wrong, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being there for them, right? Walking through their moments of darkness. And I think that's where we get that bad reputation, where, it's, by the way, it's not just internal affairs. That is the entire department, including command staff, where, we see someone they committed serious misconduct. Ooh, they lied or they falsified a report, whatever that alleged misconduct is. But we tend to leave them out in the island, and we don't want to talk to them anymore. And, we just completely just separate ourselves like, oh, my God, this guy's, this guy's bad. We just can't talk to him. And that's just part of the culture, and hopefully as we do more of these episodes, these conversations we're having, we're able to kind of alleviate a little bit of that puncture, of the bulge that's just getting ready to, to grow and grow. So I appreciate all that. Let me ask you this before we move on. I know you made lieutenant. Talk to me about what did you like being a lieutenant? Because now you step into more managerial responsibilities, if you will. What was that like?
The sheriff that that took over, that promoted me to lieutenant was we worked as detectives together.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, when I was a dispatcher, I rode with the then deputy in a ride along more than once. We'd known each other that long. He was just a couple years ahead of me in the agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was not a good old buddy type promotion, because I was definitely not the first on his list.
Right.
But he also saw something in me, and he knew we'd kind of been raised, cut from the same cloth, so to speak.
Yeah.
Him more than me, but
yeah.
So at any rate, he promoted me, and then he put me, because of my background in the communication center, where he remembered me the most when I was coming up in the agency. He put me over the communication center and said, I want you to go there and fix it. There's a morale issue in there, and there's room for you. And he gave me a list of things that he wanted me to accomplish and kind of look at. And he gave me a list of perks of why he was putting me there, and which I appreciated. One being like, hey, I want to get you out of the uniform. I want to start getting you into the fold of these, morning staff meetings. And, the guy was doing me a solid as far as I could tell.
Good.
And then, but there's no easy undertaking with me, because unfortunately for me, once I'm in, I'm all in.
Correct.
And when I got up to the communication center as a lieutenant, the same communication center that I started in as a dispatcher,
wow,
I saw that nothing changed. Nothing. The only thing that really changed was the paint color and some of the technology, and maybe a couple of the chairs. Everybody was the same, in the sense that the citizens don't appreciate people over the phone, because they're telephone tough guys anyway, and they just abuse these 911 call takers. The cops are the same. They treat them like second, maybe third class citizens at times. And in most states, dispatchers are still considered clerical. I know in California, they're considered first responders. Thank God. Like, finally.
Yeah.
Because I can give you a whole 2 hours worth of reasons why. And I know that it doesn't sit well with everybody, but it doesn't, like, I have a different experience than most. Mm-hmm. And then the problem that I see the most is that they're horrible to one another, because it's an aquarium, Marlon. I mean, like, they have nowhere to go. Like, when you and I go through, if we're working the street and we go through a horrible call, like a baby drowning, God forbid, or something like that, we have a couple options. We can go behind a convenience store and cry our eyes out. We can go to a church parking lot and pray if we want. We can go home. We could go, we could turn on an Internal Affairs podcast starring Marlon Marachi, and it'd be taken away out of that area. A dispatcher does not have those options. And when you hear something traumatic over the phone, screaming, gunshots, somebody being murdered, somebody being beat, a baby dead, it's no different than witnessing it. The only difference is the acute danger. Obviously, we're put in dangerous situations because somebody could shoot us back. But as far as what you're witnessing and what your brain processes as trauma, it's not any different. So I took that on. I wanted to do, in fact, I did a promotional project to be promoted to captain. I did a project on just like promoting wellness or mitigating stress in the civilian workforce. I also handled the records. That was the PS in the sheriff's conversation. He was like, oh, PS, you're going to handle records as well. I don't know anything about public records. So like I was behind the learning curve there, and I had to learn, that whole system. So my greatest accomplishment was being up there. And I'm telling you, there were some horrendous cases that those dispatchers go through, and people just don't understand. So, I mean, I got them into critical incident stress debriefings. I got the supervisors used to debriefing each individual dispatcher when they're on, when they've been through a traumatic call, and documenting it. So, because maybe you know this, or maybe your internal affairs didn't handle this part, but when I got there, our communication center had the most internal affairs cases of any place in the agency. Either we were heavy-handed or there was something in the water up there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what was in the water. It was a bunch of tears. It was a bunch of trauma. I mean, you just go up into your communication center if you're listening to this and tell me you don't see just a bunch of empty faces, bags under their eyes, overweight, depressed, smelling of booze, some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them just completely fit and sharpen the mind, but every single one of them has a high level of compassion of making sure that you're safe and the citizens are safe. They're just not treated well, and they're not treated fairly. And that's what a police agency is supposed to do. Like, if you're supposed to treat the citizens fairly, shouldn't we start with the employees, or shouldn't we do the same thing for the employees?
You know, spot on. Very well said. I have a total appreciation for dispatchers. At Savage Training Group, we have a dispatch priming course.
Yeah.
Led by Chrissy Dorton. She's awesome. She's good. She's out of Sacramento, California. And when she teaches down here in the West, Southern California, I get to show up and also co-teach with her. It seems that a lot of dispatchers do appreciate the presence of a law enforcement officer, so that we can kind of have these conversations and share, you know, how it is that we handle radio calls and just the whole function in it itself. But I tell you what, the last one I did over at Beverly Hills Police Department, I was just blown away. More than anything, just by the, not just the mere presence of them listening to what priming is, and we can get a whole conversation about that, but more than anything, how they're just not really appreciated. You know, we really, we're kind of like assholes, bro. We don't take the time to, you know, look, if I was, absent LAPD, because LAPD is a huge machine. I mean, come on, we're at 8,000. When I was there, we're at 10,000 sworn. I think on any given day is anywhere between 300 to 400 officers on patrol, serving the streets, right? Now, you can't just get up from your beat, right, from your area, if you will, and just go drive down to downtown LA and say, hey, you know what? That radio call, you know, what was your thinking? Thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. And just have a conversation or bring coffee or take them out for a cup to get to know them. We just don't build that relationship. And it just dawned on me after 24 years of, you know, of doing this. And I'm sitting in a room, I'm going, you know what? If I was a small agency, why can't I just build and foster those relationships with dispatching? And I'm going to ask you that later on when we get near the end, and you can tell me all about the comm center. I want to get to look at this. It's internal affairs. We got an IA story. I will tell you this: we are going to share a story together about an alcohol-related incident that happened. If you can tell me, how long ago did this happen?
2006.
Okay, so we're talking almost 10 years ago. So we're about 8 years into this incident.
Your math's a little off, but well, 2006, and we're in 2024. So
8 years, 18. Over 8 years. Well, I'm sorry, over 18 years ago. I am so sorry. Stand corrected. My math is completely off. So first and foremost, before you actually share the story, and I do appreciate it, because I really believe when it comes to alcohol-related incidents, there is so much to learn and get takeaways, especially if something that happened 18 years ago. And so my first question to you is, what happened to you 18 years ago? Are you aware, or is there still things happening, something related, same in similar circumstances, today? Because I can tell you, and today, come on. I mean, look, we got Uber, we got Lyft, we got other resources to when you do go out and get a little liquored up. I mean, I love my old fashions and all that good stuff. But I just had a really good friend of mine who was an upcoming star going up the ladder in LAPD. And unfortunately, he was involved in an alcohol-related incident. This happened not even a couple of months ago. And so I'll leave the floor up to you, and you just kind of fill in that question and kind of tell us what happened, bro.
There's a certain invincibility that comes with our job and our profession anyway.
We are invincible.
Right.
That was my next comment.
And I would love to sit anybody in the public down that says, oh, you guys are behind this thin blue line. You take care of one another. And okay, well, it was my agency that that almost arrested me. And in my opinion, violated my constitutional rights. I'm not one of those guys. I took it. I made a mistake. And I took, I don't know if the punishment fit the crime. It definitely didn't feel that way at the time.
Okay.
But you have to take responsibility. Look, it's just a matter of like, you can't complain about how deep the burn was because you were playing with fire.
Right.
You were playing with fire.
Yeah.
And you got burnt. It doesn't matter if you got burned by 30, the third degree burn or the first degree burn. And that's kind of what my case was. And look, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to give you a bunch of excuses. I'm going to give you a few reasons to set the story up. But at the time I was married to my wife. She was, her mom was going through terminal cancer treatments 3.5 hours away. I was like a brand newish supervisor. We had a puppy. We had this, I wish I could swear on here, but we had this cockatoo. I'm sure that'll be bleeped out, hopefully.
It's okay.
But we had this cockatoo that would drive us insane, sunrise or sunset. So now here I am into my career. I finally got promoted. But when they promote you as a first line supervisor, they stick you right back on the midnight shift. That's fine. That's why I want to learn. But I hadn't been on the midnight shift in forever. So I'm getting 2 and 3 hours of sleep. This bird is going insane. My wife's not home. She's with her mom. I want her to be there. I don't want her to think about anything else. And I already brought baggage into this whole thing. I had a blackout drinking problem. I brought baggage into this from childhood that I never dealt with.
Okay.
And so I continued that. And just as predicted, the marriage was going downhill with all those problems, with my drinking problem, with her mom, with her not being there supporting me, which I didn't want her to be. I wanted her supporting her mom. And I held out an olive branch, and one of the weeks she was home because she was a teacher. So she had summers off. This was a spring break, I guess. Look, let's just go have the dinner, just you and me. And let's just kind of get back. Let's just get back to good. And we never drove 2 cars anywhere because she had a, 38 or 39-year-old child to deal with. So this one time we took 2 cars and we went to a place, and we sat at the bar, and I pounded a bunch of beers, had a hamburger. She had a few drinks, whatever. She drove home. I'd been up for days. It seemed like I was on meth, and I felt woozy. I was drunk.
Yeah.
There's no 2 ways about it. I mean, but I know the difference between drunk and tired drunk, if that even makes sense. Okay. I mean, I've been sober it'll be 16 years in August. So, I mean, these aren't familiar feelings, but
right.
I pulled into a parking lot and parked my car against a hedgerow and put the car in park, and I drifted off to sleep in the driver's seat. The car is running because we're in Florida and nobody's going to shut the AC off. Florida is a physical control state. Therefore, if the keys are even in your pocket and you're sitting behind the wheel, you're in physical control of that car.
Wow. And
you're subject to the laws of the DUI law. Well, I drifted off to sleep. Okay, let me back up a second. Parking lot I pulled into had a Little Caesars, an Eckerd drug or some drugstore, a huge grocery store by the name of Cash and Carry.
Okay.
And right next to it, a little mini liquor store that Cash and Carry owned and operated. What do you think the first sentence of my IA investigation said? Oh. The first sentence of my IA investigation said he pulled into a liquor store parking lot, passed out.
Of course.
That's not exactly what happened, but okay. I like, again, you know, I never thought I would be in a position where I'd be like, well, I'll let my attorney handle this.
Yeah.
But I needed to just let my attorney handle that because it was a bunch of bullshit. That was not,
I hear you.
That was a little underhanded, but that's fine. Because that was the quote that made it into the paper, by the way.
Oh,
so
you still got the article?
So what happened is they ran me through these, hopefully I'm not skipping over anything, but they ran me through these. First thing you know, it's a young deputy sheriff. I guess I scared the bejesus out of her because I told her, look, I work with you. You know, I'm in my own car. I didn't show her a badge. I didn't do anything. I'm like, oh, I work with you. Obviously, I'm telling her that for a reason. Mm-hmm. So she's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. So let me call a supervisor. Well, there you go. There's where that goes south.
Right.
So the supervisor shows up. It's a guy that I made corporal with. We can also call that the competition, apparently.
Okay.
Because that's how he treated it. And he just escalated it from there. I'm not blaming him. I'm still blaming me. I shouldn't have been behind the wheel.
Okay.
So one thing leads to another. The shift commanders out there, I've got a whole audience of supervisors standing there watching me do these field sobriety exercises with a professional DUI investigator from our agency doing these tests, right? It's all on video. Just as an aside, he set up his car so that you could see me, my car, and the word liquor above my head. Oh. So that's how his, I think that's how his field sobriety exercises tape would have played in court.
Got it.
Which, in retrospect, I think may have been to excuse it, to get it thrown out. I don't know that. Okay. I don't know that for sure, but I'm sure my attorney would have fought for that. So, because that's prejudicial. So at any rate, I do these field sobriety exercises. I'm a professional drunk, and I did fine. He says the DUI investigator says, "Look, are you?" He says in question format, "Do I think you're too shit hammered to drive home?" Yeah, I'm not going to let you drive home. Do I think you're too impaired to throw in jail that I have probable cause for? No, I don't have probable cause to do a DUI on you. I'm not going to do a DUI. So everything is fine. We're getting ready to wrap everything up, and we're getting ready to call, or perhaps we called my wife to come get me. And the phone rings, the shift commander's phone. It's the major of that district, the commander of that district. And he says, the chief still wants him to go blow. So they're requiring me when I'm off duty to go blow into a breathalyzer that under Florida law, I'm not allowed to do because they don't have probable cause for the DUI.
Right.
But under SOP, they can do this probable cause kind of drug thing, but I'm not working. I'm not on duty.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if I refuse, which is what I was told that night, well, look, if you refuse, you face termination. So what choice do I have?
Wow.
And I'm like, I've got nothing to hide anyway. I f***ed up. And just do what a supervisor would do or what you would tell one of your troops to do. Like, just do it. So I went down there. I blew 2 different readings. They were way off. That never would have passed the muster of the state attorney's office. Uh-huh. None of it would. So they determined no DUI, no charge, no nothing. But the administration said, well, he committed a misdemeanor, didn't he? And they investigated their own DUI from there. And just determined that based on the interview with the bartender, I think they pulled my credit card receipt. Marlon, this is the thing that drives me insane to this day, that I'm still very angry about. They pulled my wife in and interviewed her as like one of the sole witnesses. And I just told you, she was going through a terminal illness with her mother. She just didn't need this. Yeah. And the pressure that was put on her was, you say the wrong thing, your husband's going to be out of a job and you're not going to have any money. So your mom's dead and your husband's, a deadbeat. Or you can lie, and you know what I mean? You just put her in a horrible situation when I was already being compliant. I wasn't fighting anything.
Right. If I may interject, let me ask you this. Who are we to blame for that? Who are we holding accountable for that? For that action? Bring your wife in.
I don't think it was the investigator. The investigator was one of the two supervisors in IA because I was a supervisor. So a supervisor, I'm pretty sure it was, what we would call a colonel. So, our structure was a sheriff, a chief deputy, and then 4 colonels.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was one of the colonels that was like, no, you're gonna bring his wife in here.
Right. So then my next question is, and this happens all the time, and I don't mean to water it down what you're telling me, but what I will say, just in terms of process, is that it gets personal. It's a little self-serving. We can agree to that, and it almost seems as though someone doesn't really like Andrew Baxter. Is what it really kind of comes down to, because here's the deal. In the world of politics, we call it what? Influence peddling, right?
Yeah.
So someone was pretty influential to get you, and here's the punchline, knowing that you don't meet the criteria from a criminal perspective of a driving under the influence under Florida law. But you know what? We just can't wipe our hands clean. We got to do something.
I'm fine with that. I get with that. I do understand that. I still hold a little place in my gut of, if you want to show how ethical you are, don't do it through unethical means. Just show how ethical you are, right? And so I do understand what you're saying to a degree. And I'll tell you this. Let me back up a second. Our sheriff had just taken over a couple of years before that. He held an all-employee meeting. It was like 4 or 5 different meetings where he marched everybody into this. I loved our sheriff. I still do. He's, retired on Montana or wherever he is, but he got up there and said, I'm telling you, I can't do anything for you if you get a DUI.
Oh,
I cannot do anything for you because we're out here telling the public not to do that. And it's very obvious that you're flying in the face of that. So I was the test case. What in my opinion, or what I learned later in life, and again, I'm not offering excuses, is like, look, dude, we deal in a different level of trauma, and we deal in a different level of numbing of the pain. We can't shoot heroin. You know what I mean?
Totally.
We dull the senses with alcohol. We dull the senses with infidelity and gambling, and we're going to find a way to dull those senses. And that's what I got caught up in. And I'm telling you that my addiction was stronger than any sheriff or chief deputy or chief of police would tell me, or internal affairs. Like, this is the invincibility I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, and totally. And if I may interject again, I suppose one of the lessons learned is, man, you haven't had a drop in 16 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And
so I mean, it really was the best thing for it. Like, listen, at the end of my career, I had an opportunity to talk to the chief deputy, who I always sought the approval from because I thought the world of the guy.
Yes.
But he hated me. It was kind of obvious, and he hated, and he was fed bad information about me, and he was fed this information that I was bitter and that I told everybody I got screwed and all this other stuff, and it just wasn't true. And we finally had a conversation the night before I was promoted to lieutenant, by the way. We finally had this face-to-face reckoning where I said, no, none of that's true. I said, you know who told you that? My competition. That's who told you that. First of all. And second of all, do you know who was telling me that I got screwed? Everything that you're saying to me, all your friends were telling me that.
Yeah.
And so what did you want me to do? And he started throwing these things at me, and I'm like, yeah, but you're talking about the guy from X amount of years ago that was drunk. I haven't had a drop to drink since. Yeah. And there's something known as the Stockdale paradox that it just basically says, like, Stockdale was a prisoner of war, and he just maintained this thought in his mind that no matter what you've been through, you're gonna get through it. When you go through hell, keep going, because eventually you're gonna be beyond halfway through.
Right.
And when you get out the other side, like, it's going to be to the point where you wouldn't change anything. You've grown and you've gained out of it. And that's where I was, and that's where I'm at. Like, it forced me into, I didn't go to rehab for another 18 months or 2 years after, but I finally had enough, and I finally made the decision, and I went into rehab and I fixed it.
Yep.
And my career took off from there. I take that back. It didn't take off from there. I spent 6 years in the penalty box. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that. Like, look, I will say this, and I don't mean to sound too religious, but I am a man of faith. I'm a man of God. Faith has it, and this is true. Under the circumstances or what you went through, regardless of how it was handled or the outcome, you know what? Look where you're at now, and I really do truly 100% believe that. Let me ask you this, if you don't mind sharing with me, what was the penalty? What did you get out of that?
Oh, I forgot there was a penalty. Okay. That promotion that I had worked my whole life for, that I wanted nothing more than, that I, as a detective, slept with the Nextel on my bedside that would go off at 2 a.m. That I walked around my house with my boxers and my pager on just because I was so dedicated to this company.
Right.
I was demoted.
Okay, so you lost that gig.
Just like you're no longer a supervisor. You're not worthy. Get back out onto the midnight shift as a deputy.
Okay.
And face that humiliation, bucko. You're lucky you dodged this bullet. Now, I'll say this. The number 1 and number 2 in charge of that agency probably didn't align with number 3.
Yeah.
And number 3 was more than willing to throw me to the wolves. And he also offered some help. I'll be fair about it. He offered a friend of his that, was an alcoholic, and offered, connecting the two of us. But he also wanted to make sure that I felt the sting of an open wound.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this now. If you were an adjudicator, what penalty would you give yourself in regards to this incident?
Marlon, we spend an entire, this is, again, getting back to the room of sergeants. You spend an entire career building your credit.
Right.
And when it's time to cash it in, sometimes it's, you also can spend an entire career ruining your credit.
Yeah.
So it's dependent on the person. Me personally, I couldn't give you, in fact, I was asked that in my
what board. Penalty do you think it's fair? What do you think
what do you think we should do? And my answer, which they couldn't understand through the tears and I was crying my eyes out because I was,
of course, totally,
for about 100 different reasons. 98 they probably didn't even know. But I was like, I don't want that decision. That's your decision. Like, I don't want to make that decision.
Yeah.
Totally. Because anything I say, it's loaded. If I say, well, I think we should go easy on me because I'm a good guy, and they're going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then if I go, I should be fired, and then,
that's a little too much.
Like, what do you think they're going to do? Like that, you've got nothing in your lawsuit if you ever want to try to come back. Right. So, just on the personal level, I was just like, I'm throwing myself at your mercy as it is.
Yeah, there you go. And that's a fair answer. I suppose, having to look back as you reflect on it now today, right?
Yeah.
And I ask you this question. I didn't mean to take you back on that day when you were asked that question. I was just thinking something along the lines like, hey, you know what? And by the way, I had a guest who actually had a DUI, and they actually gave him a 15-day suspension. And so then I counter and say, well, okay, so what do you think it's fair? What would have given yourself? And he's like, that's actually a good question. And he actually said 10 to 15. I go, well, yeah, I guess the over and under back then would have been 10. I don't know. And so, look, what I will say, having to deal with alcohol-related allegations of misconduct as I worked internal affairs, that's a tough one, man, because I think at one point LAPD had contracts. Hey, you know what? We're going to give you a contract and give you all these conditions to ensure that you just, you're an alcoholic, and we don't want you to be an alcoholic, and here are the reasons why. You can't go to 7-Eleven and you can't do this. Whoa. I got to go to 7-Eleven and buy me a Slurpee, dude. So you tell me I can't be anywhere near alcohol. So that's a whole different conversation. And then at one point, the union, they all reconvened on a meet and confer. And they said, it's a little too much. And they got rid of these contracts. So now they made it an alcohol-related issue. And then there's like a bail schedule. Like if it happens the first time, you're going to get anywhere between paper penalty, which is an official reprimand, all the way to 5 days. Second, it's going to be 15 days to a border rights facing terminate. So there is this, it's just very difficult. It's very difficult to be determining what do we punish.
Yeah, I can tell you that the punishment was the process because
bingo. I baited you into that, by the way.
They immediately suspended me without pay.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I was suspended without pay pending the outcome of this thing, which took triple-digit calendar days.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 100 and whatever days.
Yeah.
Not work days, but calendar days, 100 and whatever days that I went without a paycheck and not knowing if I was going to have a job. I was definitely facing termination because of the commission of a misdemeanor is what they charged me with. Commission of a misdemeanor, basically, because they proved the DUI.
Yeah.
So I lost the stripes. I lost the ability to get back any of that. I think on paper it turned out to be 61-day suspension.
Yeah.
Look, and then I was ordered to have free access to my blood and breath for an entire year. The thing is, Marlon, the SOP, so this is just a very fine line. We're talking about officer wellness and we're talking about this other stuff. And we say look, if you come forward or you make a mistake because of a drug or alcohol related thing, we can't punish you for that if you're going to, commit or you're going to do any kind of rehabilitation or whatever. Mm-hmm. They were full on punished. I was full on punished over that. Like the taking of my salary during that time was contrary to their own SOP that said, we will never do this.
Right.
So they were saying, we're basing what we're charging on you on your alcohol problem. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we're going to take your salary because you have an alcohol problem, which we'll never do, but we're going to do. So there were some bitter issues that I had, but from on the other end of it, when I finally got back and I started working my way back, they put me in the training division in front of this new program that they were doing. And I think that was another test from God to get up and teach everybody to do the right thing and do what the Constitution says, and fully knowing that not necessarily what they did, but just be the better man about it.
Like, hey, you know what? There's accountability, I suppose, both ways, right? This is a two street avenue. And you know what? We move on and learn from it. And so let me ask you this, because I'm curious, now that we're into 2024, in that agency, have things changed when it comes to alcohol related issues that you're aware of?
I don't want to be known for this distinction, and the only SOP that got named after me, by the way, was that right after my thing happened, they said that the promotion process is that if you've ever been demoted, you'll never be promoted again. Until people started fighting for my case to say, look, you can't throw this guy away. Yeah. So the only SOP that came of that was a good SOP with my name on it. You know how. Everybody ends up with an SOP with their name on it.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. What was your original question, though?
My original question was, here we are in 2024 in your agency. Have things changed? What have you learned? Did we learn anything from a similar situation like this?
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about like a first and second and third offense, because there are no second offenses where I work. Yeah. You hit it dead on. Times are different. Like there is Uber and Lyft and everything else. So there really is no excuse anymore. And quite frankly, if you're out there drunk driving, you're the only car on the street. You're very easy to spot.
Yeah.
So we are definitely not on the like professional courtesy plan when it comes to the DUI thing, because a failure to act SOP was laid upon us right after, King. So if you're complicit in getting somebody home, or God love you, like you're rolling the dice just like they are.
I hear you, man. Hey, man. Well, thanks for sharing that, man. I think that we're going to get a lot out of it. And again, I appreciate you sharing something so personal. Hey, look, man. Give me. This is the part that I hate about the show. Worst incident, and let's try to stay away from, because look, what I've learned. Right, I've been doing this for 7 months. I've learned that we when I say give me the worst incident that has happened in your career, we always tend to draw ourselves to that one radio call that, it's child or something that involves children, a bath, whatever. But if that's what you got, we'll take it. But give me something that just sticks with you. I mean, come on, you got a 28-year career. I'm sure it's something that was just horrible.
The human suffering in the communication center that I observed as the lieutenant. This story is one of those stories that'll knock your socks off. There was I got a phone call one morning we had a civilian director that worked for me, and he said, "Hey, do you know this deputy so-and-so?" And I said, "Yeah, I went to the module with him. Yeah, I know him pretty well." Well, he's on our radio right now. He just killed his family, and now he's threatening to kill himself. Oh. So I'm like, okay, let me get dressed. So I call our chief deputy and I tell her, hey, do you know what's going on? And she goes, yes. And as soon as she said that, I looked at my phone. I got a text from Brad, the manager, the general manager, and he said, he just shot himself on our radio. Oh. And I told her, well, he just shot himself. And she goes, oh, I hadn't heard that. And I said, it literally happened while we're talking. Mm. So we both have to get in there. Now, the thing is, I'm running this comm center. I go in there, and I only lived, 6 or 7 minutes away. And I walked in, and it was like a Civil War battlefield. Mm. It was just an eerie silence. It was surreal for me because I knew the guy. Yeah. His name was Terry Strawn. Mm-hmm. He had killed his grandbaby and his wife. He drove over to his daughter's place and killed her. Then he announced to everybody what he did. Then as the other deputies and friends were trying to talk him out of the suicide, as soon as 2 deputies pulled up on him, he shot himself right in front of them. Oh. And these dispatchers that were on the radio probably would have been forgotten about. Yeah. But the entire room heard it. Yeah, it all unfolds in the entire room, and they feel it. Yeah. They feel the sense of protection, that the ounce of or the need of prevention, and I did everything that I could to try to make it better for them, but there's nothing. Yeah. There's nothing that's going to make that better. Yeah. I did get them invited. I can't take full responsibility for it. The chief deputy made sure of it. Did get them invited to the critical incident stress debriefing. That was the first critical incident stress debriefing they had ever been invited to. And they were invited to speak first. And it was a pool of emotions once the first dispatcher spoke, because it was more than just this heavy incident. The incident was just sad in itself.
Of course.
The supervisors and managers that were working that day were in their office wrapping Christmas gifts for their squad. It was close to Christmas and all this other stuff. And so when they were able to purge all this emotion or this emotional baggage, it was more than just this incident. Yeah. It was, I am finally seen. Yeah. I'm like, you're listening to me, and I can't believe that. And I've got, 10 or 12 or 15 years, these dispatchers are saying, like, not saying out loud, but I've got all of this stuff that no one's ever wanted to listen to me about. And here you are listening to me. So that was probably, though it had a good outcome in that sense, obviously it was a very dark situation. From there, we made some changes. We definitely inserted a lot of mental wellness into the communication center. I was already working on my project on trauma and wellness within, I use San Diego's program as a model, and just, a lot of good came from that, of the worst tragedy on the planet.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of non-sworn, if you will, or even civilian law enforcement related employees, they don't, whoever you are, besides those two entities, I don't think they understand the impact that it has. And I appreciate that. And look, man, nobody wins, and it's just tragedy. And once you experience one after the other, I'm glad we're in 2024 and mental wellness. It's at the forefront. You and I know a whole bunch of people in our network who are doing that, and I really, truly 100% appreciate it. So let's get off that dark boat and let's get into something good, man. Give me something real quick that stands out. Good achievement, reward.
I got to go to the Southern Police Institute, the administrative officers course, which is an in-residence course at the University of Louisville for 3 months. It's essentially a sabbatical from your agency, and it's like an executive leadership. It's not like it's an executive leadership course. It's akin to the FBI Academy. The FBI Academy caters to a different, I don't know if it's different topics or.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're a little bit more into physical fitness, and this is more into of an academic thing. But I got to go to that. Unfortunately, it was cut short by COVID, and that helped me make some decisions about leaving police work too. So I mean, I found a lot of things out about myself in Louisville. We were there, by the way. We were in Louisville when Sergeant John Mattingly was shot in the Breonna Taylor raid. I had three. I had 3 Louisville sergeants. One was the IA. One was the homicide guy that sat right next to me. One of the homicide sergeants, and then the IA sergeant sat in the back. And we were all concerned about John Mattingly and whether he was going to make it. And then within a week on the news, all of a sudden it turned into this ugly. They went to the wrong apartment. All the Ben Crump stuff that were lies that
a lot of lies. John,
they're still maintained today that are lies.
100%. We had him on as a guest, and we talked about the IA portion of his alleged wrongdoing, if you will. They made him wait over a year on the decision making. Really good story. Apparently he didn't share it before because everybody's so focused on what happened on that day when they did the raid. Sounds so bad, but we talked about the IA. Yeah, man, that's good. Hey, you know what? I didn't get to go to one of those leadership courses for command staff, but I get it, man. There's sometimes you think that when you go, you're like, this is going to be, whatever it is, boring. You probably met the best of friends. You still probably have relationships from that SPI, sabbatical, and move forward. Hey, man, thanks for all that. Look. Talk to me about Comm Center with Drew Breezy, man. Tell him what you got going on.
Comm Center with Drew Breezy is John and I. John is an active 911 dispatcher in the Midwest somewhere.
Good.
Just an incredibly, look, let me distill it down. It's 2 really intelligent guys saying stupid things. And I wanted to give a voice to the dispatchers. That was one of the missions I had when I was working. So, I'm now able to do it because I can speak freely. I can do it the way I want to do it.
Yes.
But what we do is we take, we'll take you from the 911 call through the body cam. Like we can break down and explain why the dispatcher's saying what they're saying or why the 911 operator's saying what they're saying. And then obviously I can give the cop side of it or the tactical part or whatever. We also have guests on there, like dispatchers that have been through. We're getting ready to have an episode of dispatcher that had to leave the profession because of complex PTSD. She was on the radio during an officer-involved shooting, and we've had other dispatchers on that had to leave because of PTSD, and that their agencies completely abandoned them. Like, yep, you're just not fit to work for us anymore. But they threw them away like trash. And I want to give those dispatchers the voice that they deserve, and I really want the cops to hear, just simple things like calling after a bad call, just calling up there and telling them how it ended.
Yeah, no, totally.
They don't know how it ended.
And you know what? That's one thing that I learned about the courses. There's no closure. There really is no closure, and that's something we got to fix, man. Hey, listen, you know what? There will never be enough platforms, and you know what? That is super informative, very educational. I appreciate it. And hey, you never want a guest. You can always get a hold of me, and we'll do all that. Hey, we're at the end of the episode here, brother. Look, any advice you can give anyone who wants to get involved in law enforcement or even to become a dispatcher, I'll leave the floor up to you. Just imagine someone's just saying, hey, I want to get involved in law enforcement. What kind of advice do you have?
Think critically, and don't look for who to blame. Look for the cause and try to fix the root cause and just understand that people are humans. I mean, cops, we're the worst at that. Yeah. I have very specific opinions about what happened in Uvalde, and most cops don't agree with what I say about Uvalde, but you know what? Those are human beings that you're calling a coward, and you're feeding the rest of the United States with this information the
rhetoric.
Jimmy's a police officer and he thinks they were cowards. That's not necessarily what happened. If you look at this critically, the Acorn shooter guy, it's the same thing. Like, come on, man, have a little mercy on this guy. He had a bad day, and yes,
and we're so quick to mock him. No, totally, I totally get that.
Yeah, so just show a little mercy and show a little compassion, and listen. There's probably no more. There's no better way of understanding compassion until you need it yourself, and I was definitely put in that position, and probably for a reason. So. I can say in addition to shedding alcohol, I'm probably a reformed dick. Like, just don't be a dick on the street. You can ruin somebody's life by throwing them in jail, or you can see their point and just move on about your day and move on and let them move on about theirs. I'm not saying, just throw your hands up and be a wuss your entire life, but totally. You don't have to be a dick to everybody. There's no, you're not going to get extra You're not going to get extra coins in Mario World to get into heaven with, by being a dick.
Very well said, my friend. Hey, listen, you owe me, I love all fashions. I would prefer Japanese whiskey, maybe Hibiki or, Santori's my go-to, but I'll take some Hibiki while you sip on your O'Doul's or your Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
Or your Shirley Temple, for that matter. I don't know which one do you like, but you owe me one when I go to Florida. Dude, great conversation, brother, and I totally appreciated everything that you shared with us. And we'll see you soon, dude. I'll see you at the incubator, right?
Yeah, we are birthing ourselves through this incubator. Yeah, we are growing.
Absolutely.
I really do appreciate the opportunity, and it's I guess to close.
Yes.
You and I were talking at the beginning of this thing about exact dates, like how, what year were you promoted?
Oh,
and all this.
Yeah.
And man, that was so important when I was in it. But you learn after being out of it for a year and a half, you don't even remember that shit anymore.
Hey, man, 1992 is 1992, bro. All we can remember is just the riots. Who cares when you win the academy?
You'll get to a point, fellas, ladies and gentlemen, where you realize it doesn't matter.
That's right.
It doesn't matter.
Hey, brother. Good talking to you. We'll see you soon, man. Hey, on that note, please be safe. And like always, don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.